Hello everybody, today I would like to talk to you about my casual Dragon Flare deck. It is named Dragon Flare for a reason, because there are some awesome dragons and mana flare. This is a really fun deck to play. It is a casual one for a good reason, because its main strategy is very often easily countered by proper sideboarding. But nevertheless, this deck is a lot of fun to play, and in casual it's definitely one of the better choices that you can go with. First of all, let's talk about the mana base. Of course, we have got plenty of mountains. It is a mono-red deck after all. There are also Mishra's Factories. I always say that I'm not a fan of auto-including Mishra's Factories, but in this case they're definitely justified, because we have got Earthquake, we can easily clear the board, and afterwards swing with Mishra's Factories if our air plan doesn't work. There is a Strip Mine, of course. Mox. Sol Ring is very important in this deck. We want to get as much mana as we can, and we also can do this using the Lotus. Then let's talk about the most important red staple card. Of course, there is a playset of Lightning Bolts to finish our opponent, to kill some smaller creatures, and to finish the creatures sometimes if they survive in a battle with one of our dragons or Mishras. Chain Lightnings, of course, play set as well. Fireball. In my videos I often talk about how I am not a fan of always preferring Fireball over Disintegrate, but in this deck we definitely can make use of the Fireball multiple target ability, and it's not uncommon to Fireball for 10 or even more. And very often we want to clear the board using Fireball. In this deck that's definitely possible. Earthquake, we have got a playset, and if you want to sideboard, yes, you can have a playset. In this current build I have only 3 copies, but this is also usually enough. Gauntlet of Might. Gauntlet of Might is an iconic card. It is great for a good reason. Even though it is a symmetric card, even if we play not really a mirror match, but even if we play against another red deck, or at least against another deck that has red, very often this card still works to our advantage, because we have got a lot of X spells, we can pump our dragons. We definitely can make better use of this card than our opponent, most of the times. We also have got Fork, which works very well with the plan that we've got in terms of Gauntlet of Might and Mana Flare. Should our opponent use a big Fireball spell after you have cast, let's say, Gauntlet of Might or Mana Flare, you can easily fork it, or maybe your opponent will be able to Brain Geyser for a lot. Fork is an incredibly powerful card in good hands. It just gives you so many options. Now, the most interesting part. But before we go to these, let's talk about some other cards we have included. We have included Wheel of Fortune, of course, and also Sword of the Ages. Sword of the Ages is the card we're going to use in the unlikely event of being overwhelmed by our opponent's army. Should our opponent have a lot of creatures, especially flying creatures, and cause a creature stalemate, we can still pump our dragons and sacrifice them using Sword of the Ages, dealing some lethal damage. Also, this card, which is very interesting, works against Circle of Protection Red, because the damage that you will be able to deal using these creatures that you sacrifice will be colorless, not red. So that's quite interesting. So, the dragons themselves. First of all, a card you don't see every day. Nalathan Dragon. Nalathni, I believe, is the name. Dragon. I have briefly talked about this card in my Whale Day video. You can see that this card is dramatically different from all other cards, be it the 4th edition, for example, or revised, of course, as well. It is incredibly saturated, and it also has a very, very high contrast between the text and the frame. So this white is incredibly bright. I'm not actually sure where this can be seen. I believe that in foreign white bordered we can see a similar situation, but still the contrast is not that stark. So Nalathan Dragon, as you know, is the infamous card that was originally printed for people who went to a convention, and there is a very good way to tell whether this was the original card that was given at the convention or whether this was the card that you could get if you mail a coupon from the book. So this one is the book promo itself. It is very interesting that these cards are actually legal in Atlantic and Eternal Central rules. They don't get a lot of discussion, but 3 cards, Silver Stark, Arena, these are the 2 cards that usually get mentioned, and Nalathan Dragon as well. And about Silver Stark and Arena I have heard quite a lot. Arena is actually a decent card, Silver's is not something we're going to comment on, but the dragon itself, banding is not really relevant, it's not such an important ability here. And as you can see, it's just a weaker version of Dragon Whelp. But still, it's an extra dragon. The art is amazing. The artist is iconic, was commissioned by Wizards of the Coast, is already an established artist, was already an established artist in 1994, and a very high profile one. So this card was created in order to attract people to the event, which it did, but you know the rest of the story. So Nalathan Dragon acts, we can say, as the 5th and the 6th Dragon Whelp. Dragon Whelps are really nice. You don't really have to follow the limits, because very often you can swing for lethal if you've got plenty of mana. But even if you do not do that, even if you don't go over the limit, 5/3, maybe more if you have got Gauntlet of Might, this is still a really fearsome creature. And of course, the boss of this deck is Shivan Dragon. I don't need to tell you that Shivan Dragon is probably the most iconic creature of old school Magic. Some people might argue that this honor goes to Juzam Djinn. Well, Juzam Djinn is definitely very sought after for the obvious reason that it's a reserved list card and very difficult to get your hands on. But Shivan Dragon certainly has this amazing art. I love the background here, the contrast that it creates with these bright colors of the dragon and the teeth, the claw of the dragon. It's just amazing. It's an amazing card with amazing art. Really fair in terms of power. 6 mana is not tremendously large casting cost in old school Magic. Definitely manageable with all mana acceleration. Very often I would go turn 2 mana flare or turn 3 if I don't get any mana acceleration, and next turn I'm going to bring Shivan Dragon, and very often our opponent will not be left with a lot of time until Shivan Dragon attacks for lethal, such as for 12 and more. So yes, as I said, Mana Flare is of course a symmetric card, but the beauty of all of these old school symmetric cards is that we have to make them as unfair as possible, and we have to take advantage of these cards, use them and capitalize on them. So as I said, many decks are not able to properly use this card. Some small aggro decks will run out of steam very fast, much faster than you. Of course, if you're dealing with some combo deck, you should be careful, because you can become the victim of combo and we will not have any ways to stop our opponent, because there is no counter magic, no destruction of any elements. Of course, we cannot battle against enchantments and many other things. And of course, very often these cards will become the targets of your opponent's removal themselves. But still, very often you will be able to let your opponent maximize and commit to the board, maximize the number of creatures that they cast, then kill them all using Earthquake, Fireball. So still, there is no drawing engine except for Wheel of Fortune, and of course you can play this deck in many different ways. This is not the only build. Some interesting ideas with Power Surge, if we decide to play using Mana Burn, are also possible. But other than that, it's a great deck. It's a really fun deck, a really interesting one. That's what I wanted to tell you about today. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye.